Hello, 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 beautiful people. This is L.A. Roberts, and I want to welcome you once again to another episode of Conversations with Greatness. If you do not know who I am, of course, an international best-selling author. I'm a motivational speaker, a breakthrough strategist, an inspirationalist. I am D, all of the above. But we're not here to talk about me. We are here to talk about the amazing, the awesome, the wonderful Dr. Yolandra Hancock. We are here to talk to her because this is Conversations with Greatness. If you don't know her, she's Dr. Yola. Let me just say that. You need to go ahead and Google her, get to know her. But I'm going to tell you just a little bit about her right now so that you'll be familiar. So Dr. Yolandra Hancock is a mom, a physician, and a public health shero. Yes, she is. Let me just go ahead and put my check on that. Yes, she is. Who combines her hands-on clinical experience and public health expertise with her passion for building vibrant communities to provide patient-empowered, best-in-class care. You bad, ain't you? Okay, all right. Her educational background includes a bachelor's educational degree, I said that wrong, from UCLA, her medical doctorate degree from UCLA School of Medicine, and her master of public health from Johns Hopkins Bloomberg School of Public Health.
Yes.
She is a professor. Why? I can't talk. You got me nervous. This is what it is. That's what it is. She's a professor at the Milken Institute School of Public Health at the George Washington University. The founder of Ask Dr Yola, a new telemedicine platform. And honestly, I've seen her on Facebook. She is so informative. You have to make sure that you log on to her actual, her clips, because she teaches you a lot. And I'll make sure that you get that information so that you can follow her. And she's a consultant for the Prince George's County Council when they sit as a board of health. And all the work that she does as a physician, as a professor, and a public health champion, Dr. Hancock is fully committed to raising up the next generation to reach their full health potential. What's up?
Well, how are you?
I am great. How are you?
I'm doing well. I'm happy to be here with you.
Good. So let me just tell people this. When I invite people to Conversations with Greatness, I don't just invite random people that I don't have any connection with or that I do not know. I read all of her amazing, accolades and things that I know about her, but this is my friend. So we're going to have a great conversation. So we met in 2017.
Yes.
Was it North Carolina?
It was in North Carolina, yep.
Okay, and we were at a retreat.
Yeah, 21st century retreat, women's retreat.
Yes, for 3 days, I think it was.
We got there Friday, we rolled out on Sunday. But it felt like it was like 2 weeks.
I know, and we were in the presence of Sharice Richards, and we had Lisa Nichols in the house for those days, and we just got to know each other on a very deep and personal level, and we've connected and stayed connected since then. And you have been so amazing as just a friend. And every time we go to to somewhere and we're going to be there, we make sure that we connect. And right. So I wish it was somewhere that we can go now, but unfortunately we got stuff that's holding it down.
Yeah, COVID let us be great.
It won't. But no, it won't let us be great, but we don't have a choice but to be great because that's just who we are.
Yes, sis.
Right. Okay, so
it's in our DNA.
I can't help but be great.
We have no option other than that.
Anything other than that would be uncomfortable.
Right. It wouldn't fit.
It wouldn't. So I'm going to ask you this question because I did tell people about you professionally and I told them all your great accolades and things like that. But one of the questions that I like to ask is who you are personally. A lot of people wear the hats of their profession. They wear the hats of their degrees, but they don't really know who they are personally, which to me is a disservice to not only themselves, but the people that they run into every day. Because your titles can be stripped, right? But if you don't have that the inner relationship with yourself, it just doesn't work. So I'm going to ask, who is Dr. Yola?
So Yolandra Yvette Hancock is what I call it. I am from Louisiana, and you can take the girl out of the country, but you can't take the country out the girl. And so I love just down home experiences, connection to family. I miss my grandmother desperately. She's out in Louisiana. I'm a nature lover. I'm a tree hugger. It's the California side of me, with a real respect for nature. As my grandmother would say, I'm a child of the Most High, because with God is at the forefront of everything that I do. And I am. Without him, there would be no Dr. Yola or a Yolandra Yvette Hancock. And so that's how I see myself. When I think about the question, I thought about, I'm a mom. I'm like, well, no, who am I separate from my roles and responsibilities? And I really am. Like, I think people would be surprised. They assume me to be sort of this citified go-getter, but really at the end of the day, I love to sit on a back porch, listen to birds chirping while I sip on some stevia sweetened lemonade with like a boo. Like that's my joy. That's my peace, is like just literally either that or sitting on the beach, because water is like my thing. That's.
Okay. All right. Okay. So I like that you said that you thought about saying, well, I'm a mom. And I think that it's important that you did bring that up, because a lot of people do connect with just being a mom, and they don't realize that first you are a child of God. Then you are a woman that is evolving, right? Every day as women, we evolve, and we get to another place, and you have to get to know yourself. And I think that, and I don't have children yet. One day I will.
Yes, you will.
But the connection to the role can be so tight that once that role is still there, because you'll always be a mom,
right?
But when your children grow and they flourish, then there's so many mothers that have a hard time with that.
Right, because they define themselves by their role as mother. And, I'm clear in who I am, who I was, and who I will be with my daughter in my life. And once she graduates and she takes off out of the house, flies, cruises, and is amazing. And I think it's important. I've seen that as a pediatrician. I see it often that a mother links her value, her worth, to her role as mother. And so when a child falls short of the mother's expectations, then there's this internalization of what the child did or did not do. And as much as I know I will fail as a parent, because this isn't about perfection, it's about persistence, I can my worth to my motherhood. I really have to link my worth to who I know I am and whose I am, so that no matter what happens in my motherhood, no matter what happens in relationships, we're going to talk about that, I'm sure, whatever happens in career, I don't waver in knowing who I am and my confidence and so forth. And that's not something I've always had. That's something I've had to work through to reach that point.
Yeah. And you know what? I think that women, we can attribute our success to the relationship and the children before we do anything else. And you know what's crazy about that is you would think that times have changed, right? People are like, oh, times have changed and it's not like that anymore. When in actuality, from a little girl, that's what was put in front of us. You are to get a husband, you have to have children. If you do it in any other order, you're out of order. That's not right. If you happen to have children before you're married, then you need a man to help you with those kids. Or, and it's always something that comes to women. But if you happen to do it the other way, then something is wrong, right? So I'm a beautiful 38 years old.
Yes, you are.
Oh, thank you. I'm not married, and I don't have any children yet.
Yet.
And you'd be very surprised how many times I get the question, when you gonna get married, LA? Or wait, it says, when are you gonna have children, LA? And I go, well, when I get married. And it's, well, girl, I know I better what? Like, like there's this there's this expectation that women have, but men, they can be 50.
50, 60, 70.
Right. And they'll be like, oh, he decided never to get married because he had his career. He wanted this and wanted that. So I like the fact that when you did express who you were, you did not start with mother. Now, don't get me wrong. If you would have started with mother, that's just a reality. Right. that is your reality. And I'm not saying don't identify with being a mother, but it's important that we know who we are. Who are you? And I'm talking to the people that are watching too. Who are you as a person without anything else? You have to know that, because at the end of the day, if everything gets stripped away from you, you're still left with you, and you can't say I'm nobody.
Exactly.
Yeah. So here's a question.
Ask.
You ready? Okay. What has been one of your greatest accomplishments in your life?
I think it's a dual answer. The first is becoming a physician. I come from resiliency. My mother got at 14 and did a phenomenal job of becoming a mommy at 15. She did not let her circumstances define our outcome collectively. And she had to make some difficult choices for me to be where I am. My success is a reflection, not just of my own sacrifice, but the sacrifice of my mother, growing up in a single parent household. And there were many a time where people told me I wouldn't be able to do it. There were many a time I told myself I wouldn't be able to do it. It's the narrative, that's that soundtrack that gets recorded in children's heads that continues to be on auto repeat as you progress through and try to achieve. And so when I went to UCLA, even my freshman year, there were challenges. I didn't have housing when I first got to UCLA, and I barely had any money, but God worked it out. And then when I was applying to medical school, I couldn't afford to apply when I first graduated from UCLA. I ended up taking a job as a teacher out in Watts. I taught first and second grade. And then as I was applying to medical school, I subbed in kindergarten. And it was one of the best moves of my career, because not only get used to being around children all day and really being able to tap into my passion as an educator, it also allowed me to learn how to establish relationships with parents and understand what we call the social determinants of health and public health. So when a child does not know their ABCs, it isn't simply because the mother or father doesn't have a desire, but it's a lot of the social circumstances that either take education or negate it. And it's where the child is born, where they grow, where they live, where the mother may work. All of these things come into play in terms of a child's ability to excel. So going into pediatrics, to be able to focus on those areas, not just in terms of asthma, rashes, but really the whole child and the environment in which that child lives, I was able to get that and going to become a teacher. And then when I applied to medical school, I didn't get in right away. I applied all over the place and was on the wait list at 3 different universities. I ended up going to a post-bac program. I lived with my mother. And right before I had to take the MCAT again, the entrance exam into medical school, I went to go visit my then boyfriend, now ex. And UCLA called.
XX.
Hey, we'll talk about that. I'm done with it. But that I was visiting him, and UCLA called me. It was like 4 days before my birthday. We share a birthday month. So UCLA called me 4 days before my birthday. I never lost hope. I said, God, I know that this is the calling on my life. I wanted to be a doctor since I was 7. So I said, I'm not going to be discouraged. I'm going to follow through. Whatever you tell me to do, Lord, this is what I'm going to do. So I prepared for the MCAT, thinking I was going to take it again. And literally the Friday before school started, they called me and they said, can you be on campus on Monday? And I just did a hallelujah praise dance and an ugly cry, because I had worked took us off to get into medical school. I had worked 30 hours a week to afford to go to college, and then had to take 4 classes a quarter to still keep my financial aid. So it's near a full-time job. with taking 4 classes where classmates would take 2 or 3 and had no job. And I was able, when I got into medical school, I sat in the front row. I dressed up. I had on a dress with a blazer, hair done, nails done, everything popping. And I was part of the FRC front row crew the entire 4 years. And then when I went to pediatric residency, I also performed to my best because I was so eternally grateful knowing how I've been. And then the second would be becoming a mom. People don't talk a lot about issues with infertility, especially within the African American community. And I had been trying for a good year or two, to the point where I was becoming resentful within my patient population. I remember fussing at a mother because she was not treating her child the way that I thought she should. And I literally went off on her. I had to repent before God that day, that moment, and then came back and apologized to her and realized I had to release it. That was the one time I couldn't control. I'm type a female. I could not make my body do what I wanted it to do. And I literally released it. This was in December of 2011. I released it. I prayed. I said, God, if it be your will, let it be done. I was pregnant in February of 2012.
You know what? Let me say something. It's in the release. And that's what people do not understand. I have been in situations where I've tried to control it I want it to happen this way. It has to happen this way. And I need it to happen this way. It's in the release that the stress comes off of you and you're not worried about it anymore, because certain things that you want and you may need become idols.
Yes.
They become so, you become so engulfed in them. It's everything is about that. Everything is about it. Everything, they go, well, focus on it. Focus on the goal. Sometimes it's not okay to do that because you lose yourself in the process.
Yeah.
And God wants you to trust him in the process. And so that release will be what is needed.
And sometimes you miss the lessons that you need to learn in order to be ready for when it gives you what you've been asking for. But if you're so laser focused on the ultimate goal, you miss out on everything that you're supposed to do, everything you're supposed to be, so that you will be ready. And I can tell you, the first 2 years that I was trying, because of the workload that I was experiencing, it would have been horrible. I would have missed out on a lot of my daughter's milestones. I missed nothing in her early toddlerhood, all of that. I was there for the first words. I was there for every first you can think of, but that wouldn't have been the case had it happened when I wanted it to. So I'm forever to God for doing it when he knew I needed it done.
Yeah, it's all about the timing.
Mm-hmm.
And, we think we know us.
Yeah.
But if we really sit down and ask ourselves the question, I remember standing in the kitchen, this was probably like 3 years ago. And I asked myself, am I really ready to get married now?
Mm-hmm.
And the answer was no. I was like, wow, I'm really not. Like, I'm really not ready. And this was, about 3 years ago. And I was like, I'm really not ready to get married right now. Do I want it? Yes.
Mm-hmm.
But am I ready? Am I the woman that I need to be, that, I can be resolute in myself and not get so hooked in and connected and lost in someone else? Am I confident enough to walk with my head held high so that the trust will be there with my husband, so that when he does leave out the house, I'm not sitting around going, am I enough? Do I look good enough? Do whatever? All of these things that, and I'm sitting there and I'm going through all of these different things. And I'm like, wait a minute, I have some growing to do.
Yep.
So when that aha thing, and you're really true to yourself, because, you can lie to other people, but when you start lying to yourself, that's a problem, right? So just here, I'm like, you know what, I'm ready. And I can really say, you know what, I'm ready.
Right. Work. You've done the work. You've recognized what work needs to be done. And in those 3 years, you've committed to doing the work.
Right. But you have to ask yourself the real questions about absolutely everything.
Everything. Right?
Yes. Everything. And people just don't. And let me ask you this.
Yes.
This ain't in the email and not on the paper.
Let's go.
Why do you think people are so comfortable with lying to themselves?
I think it becomes something that we're truly trained to do from the
Mm,
time little. There were instances, like I'll give you a perfect example, and I love my mother to pieces, but there were times I'd be upset and my mother would say, you better not let one drop out your eye. So that taught me how to hold on to emotion.
mm,
It's all right. I'll be all right. You are told to, I don't want to hear all that. Stop all that whining. I don't want to hear complaining. You're not allowed to ask questions. And so you hear that so much that you start telling that to yourself. And you're
uh-huh,
like, whine. We're going to do this. No, I'm okay. Because there was not created for you not to be okay. And then
mm,
you watch others who do the same thing. I know there were times for the women in my family when I could sense that they were not okay, but they put their capes on and they still flew.
yeah, yeah.
And learn, you're trained to do it, and then you learn by example how to do it. And I don't do that. Like this morning, I'll be honest with you, LA, I woke up, I didn't feel well. I didn't
Mm,
pretend. I woke up, my daughter came in the room. She was in school. I made sure she logged in, got her schoolwork started in her virtual academy. But then I went and laid, I was tired and my head hurt. She came in and said, Mommy, are you okay? I didn't lie. Like, no, Mommy, gonna be fine. I said, no, my head hurts and I need to get a little sleep. She came in with a cup of water and some blueberries to take care of Mommy. And I told her, thank you for that. But I also give her permission. I say to her all the time, feel the way you feel. It's okay. I'm not going to tell you how you should and shouldn't feel. Now, I ain't going to let you cry till you run out of tears. We're going to talk about emotional control because there's a difference. But
yeah,
I'm not other that's like, I don't want to hear that crying. Shut it all down because I know what that means. I know what happens when you become an adult and you shut it all down. It eats away at you. It manifests physically as high blood pressure, as
yeah.
diabetes, as headache, and it impacts your relationships because you don't feel like you can communicate in a healthy way.
Correct, correct. Um, it's okay not to be okay.
It's okay not to be okay.
It's okay not to be okay. I actually interviewed my cousin, which is a civil rights lawyer in Albuquerque, New Mexico, Leon F. Howard III. He is my papa's namesake.
Wow.
Interviewed him. I interviewed him, and we talked about the same thing. It's okay not to be okay, but people are so used to putting on the mask of okay
Mm-hmm.
that they don't know when to take it off. They don't know how to take it off.
Right.
We have to learn how to express ourselves in healthy ways
Mm-hmm.
because like you said it can manifest in other ways and you don't want that to happen. There are a lot of women that walk around and they're afraid to express themselves because they feel like they're going to be taken advantage of.
Mm-hmm.
Men as well.
Yeah.
I don't want to take an advantage, but then you have to have the maturity to choose who you can express yourself to. Like, just don't go outside and sit on the corner with a sign that goes, I'm a mess, and just start crying. But you should have a healthy outlet,
Right.
something that you can do. So yeah, that's good. And with that, and I'm gonna skip around a little bit.
It's okay.
And this year alone, we have slid into a monumental year.
Mm-hmm.
You would not be able to tell me, you would not have been able to tell me in 2017
Yeah.
when we were sitting on the couch eating pizza and laughing and joking with Sharice and Lisa and everybody in the room that we would be going through this today. You wouldn't have been able to pay me to, then I'm like, in 2020, we're going to have a pandemic and everybody going to be in the house and then we don't have to wear masks. And oh yeah, Kobe Bryant is going to die with 7 other people in a helicopter crash. And oh yeah, they're going to start taping, this young man by the name of George Floyd is going to be murdered,
Yeah.
for
And
everyone to see.
was murdered in her bed.
Right. And Breonna Taylor.
Ahmaud Arbery's going to get hunted down like an animal, not by police, but some random white people in the country. Yeah. No, you paid me to make me believe it.
Right. We would have been sitting there looking at each other like, what kind of story is this is not even funny. Like, there's no way. So with all of the stuff
Mm-hmm.
that we have been experiencing, psychologically,
Yep.
just emotionally. I have personally just cried. Like, there is no way, in my opinion, you can be going through all that you're going through right now, because we're all going through this collectively, that you can't feel this.
Right.
You know, and talk about that. Let's talk about that part of it, of how hard we're being hit with
Right.
everything that's happening right now.
Right. I call it a triple pandemic, right? So we're dealing with the actual viral pandemic with COVID-19. We're dealing with a racial injustice pandemic that has existed since the inception of this country. This ain't brand new.
Oh,
and,
right.
And then there's sort of all the collateral damage from COVID-19 is that third pandemic: economic, emotional, mental, relational, right? All of those things happen as a result of COVID-19. And some of it we talk about, some of it we don't. And we have to have space, especially for that collateral damage pandemic, to be discussed. You know, with COVID-19, part of the reason why I get so frustrated and come to tears is because, as a public health expert, as a physician, as a mom, and as a Black woman, to see how horribly mishandled this has been, especially when there's a disproportionality in terms of who's impacted by COVID. Black folks are dying at 3.5 times the rate of whites. Latinx and Native American communities are dying at 2.5 times the rate of whites. So it's hitting different. And then I think about our children and the level of loss that they're experiencing because of the statistics that I just mentioned. And the fact that this has been so politicized by the federal administration and how horribly mismanaged it has been, knowing that the outcome of over 220,000 people losing their lives, family members losing loved ones, are simply a reflection of someone's ego and narcissistic tendencies. Like, that drives me bananas. The Bible says to pray for your leaders, and I try my best to get on my knees and pray for our leaders, but I'll tell you, the flesh tells me get up, because I want change, right? Which is why I'm making sure everybody gets their vote on, right? That's the first thing. In terms of COVID, but I also feel like the pandemic, the triple pandemic, has allowed me to walk in my purpose. I'm big into education, and there are a lot of pieces of this pandemic that require some critical analysis skills, basic public health skills. Like, how else are you going to navigate through what should how else are you going to navigate through mixed messages in terms of wearing a mask, don't wear a mask, social distance, why, stay in your house, don't stay in your house? All of those things require trusted sources to sort of talk and address the myths. And so that's one role that I feel comfortable having stepped in, but it's also addressing these racial injustices and being able to go to protests. I'm actually going to a rally tomorrow to talk about racial injustice and the health system as it relates to it and vaccines. And so really figuring out, what can I do to help my people in this time of distress? And then in terms of that collateral damage piece, for me as a mom and as a pediatrician, it's making sure that children have a space to be acknowledged and cared for in the midst of this pandemic, because us grownups are over here on social media, on the news, talking back and forth, but very rarely are we allowing our children the safe space to speak on how they feel about COVID, how they're feeling about racial injustice, how they're feeling about all of these things. And so being able to really pay close attention to how our little ones are dealing with this, to give them permissions, because sometimes for adults and children, they need permission to not be okay. And so talking to parents, talking to even just parents, anyone who has children in their life, making sure that not only are we talking about how we're feeling and maneuvering through these pandemics, but are we going to our children and actively engaging them? Those are the things that I do, so that we don't have a lost generation who's either emotionally numb because of how much they've experienced, or emotionally devastated because no one checked in to see how they're doing.
Yeah. Now, here's a question. What do you think about, because I see it from two different ways, and I have a really good friend of mine who's a teacher. What do you think about the parents that are so adamant about sending their children back into the classroom? And I know there is a it's a two-sided thing. Some of the arguments that I have heard, and let me back up just a little bit. One of the things that used to bother me is while being on social media is seeing parents post about their kids getting on their nerves.
Mm-hmm.
They need to go somewhere, or, like, my kids getting on my nerves, but they're yours. Like, I don't get that. Now, I'm not saying that everybody doesn't get frustrated, right? Everybody gets frustrated. Everybody needs their own space.
Right.
But you want your kids to go back to school. Is it because they're getting on your nerves, or is it because you really have something else to do? And sometimes, in a lot of the situations I have seen, it's because they're getting on your nerves. And for me, that is a situation. Sorry, my grandmother was trying to call. Grandma, you got to hold on. Hold on. You know why? It's so funny because I have to put my phone on vibrate, because my grandmother is just my grandmother. She lives in California, and she will keep calling, like, back to back. And guess what? There's nothing wrong.
Yeah. My grandmother will blow my phone up too, like 5 times, especially if it's the quick decline. If it just goes to voicemail, she's good. But if it's the quick decline, that means that's the bat signal for something ain't right. Call me 50 times. But to your question, there are 2 responses to it. The first is we have to acknowledge that this is a completely new space, right? So parents are used to their children being at home, maybe during the summer, but even then it was summer camp. There's always a way to get your kids out of the house. So not only were children in the house, they couldn't also go outside because we didn't know if COVID was up in the air. We didn't know what to do. So it's literally cabin fever that took place. When I talk to parents about sending their children back to school, I think children need to be back in terms of social, in terms of access to resources, and in terms to support. Not all parents have the patience and capacity to help navigate their children in this virtual space. The other issue that we always have to acknowledge is the digital divide, particularly among Black and Brown communities, where our children are at a disadvantage in terms of their access to broadband internet access, right? But in order for that to happen, in order for children to be able to go back to school, we have to do things in the right way. And that has not been what's happened. What I say to parents, especially when they're at their wits' end, is 1, you need to be creative in your space. What are you doing to create some separation? Because if your kid is in your face physically, it's like any relationship, right?
Right.
I love all my people, my mother, my bestie, my daughter, everybody. But I'm not that person who can tolerate you being in my face, in my space all day. And I'm a pediatrician, love my daughter to pieces. So what I did was created opportunities for her to be elsewhere. From March, I did mommy school. I literally was my daughter's educator from March through June. But when she was done with school, we knew to break. You go do this. I gave her activities. I invested a little bit at Dollar Tree, so you don't have to break the bank. And we had, like, you're getting out of the house, even if it's in the backyard. So I have a little respite. I think self-care is very important. And so I don't, I understand parents who are like, ooh, child, when is school going back in? But in order for you to be able to address it, you need to put forth some effort, like any other relationship, right? You can't be dating your boo and then bored, talking about he don't do nothing. Well, what are you doing? What are you doing?
But let me ask you this, because I'm seeing it from a couple of different perspectives, because the virtual space could be the safer space. And then we have teachers that have to be in the classroom and have to expose them, and then they have families outside. So it's it's a two-edged sword, because I have a friend that's a teacher, and she has a daughter, that she has a young child, and it's like, so you want her to have her child in the, in this atmosphere. You want her child to go back to school, then you want her to be in the classroom. You want to try to social distance to second graders, which, how can you do that? They don't, how do you tell them you haven't seen your friends in 6 months, but you can't hug them, you can't talk to them? So it's it's a two-edged sword. But what is the most irritating thing to me is the parents that just want to get rid of their children because they don't want to deal with it. And but the teacher is the teacher, not the parent. So it's
But I think what you bring up speaks to a more important point that existed well before COVID. And as I mentioned, I was a former elementary school teacher, and the expectation for a decent number of parents is that we are there to raise their children.
Unfortunately.
It's the unfortunate truth. And I think that part of a conversation that needs to be had, that should be birthed out of COVID, is what is the expectation of the educator? What is the role of the school system, especially when you're expecting teachers to literally put their lives on the line, when nearly a third of teachers are over the age of 50. And we know that over 40% of the American population is dealing with obesity. Those two risk factors in and of themselves put teachers at risk for severe COVID infection. And again, it speaks to a bigger, I think if there's some beauty in COVID, the beauty of COVID is that it has shed light on so many issues that need to be, right? It's in how parents spend time, quality time with their kids. Because just because your kids are in your face does not mean that they're getting you. They're not getting the full beauty of you, especially when you are irritated with them. If you're not doing things to engage and have fun with your children, then yeah, they're going to work on your nerves. But my daughter and I, we created something called swing dodge. She swings on the swing and I throw a ball at her. Very simple, but we added, if I hit arms, 20 points, chest, 50 points, back, 50 points, legs, 30 points. So we're doing math, we're having fun. I'm getting some physical activity, and we're not just sitting in the house being bored with her getting in my face about what are we going to do now? What are we going to do now? No, we did some things. And she's like, I've invested in her, but it goes back to any relationship. One of my patients was complaining about his wife, and I'm sick and tired of being in her face. And I said, have you dated your wife since COVID started? And it was crickets. I said, just because you're in the same physical space does not mean that is quality time. What have you done for her lately?
Come on, Jane. What'd you say?
What have you lately? I said, you have to be purposeful. A woman is a vessel. You pour into it, you receive the overflow. You over expecting a little drip, and she running dry. So what do you do to invest?
Right.
So I get homework. He did his homework assignment. She ain't working on his nerves no more. Well,
they working, but it ain't nerves.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's interesting because as far as relationships, so we'll start talking about relationships. As far as relationships are concerned, and people were like, who's still married after COVID? Well, why wouldn't you be married after COVID? Like, I'm like, who's still, because Stephen Furtick, I was actually watching him, and he said, and this quote was, he said, when COVID happened, and this is my paraphrase, when COVID happened, and this is what he said, you were faced with your dysfunction with no distraction. Woo! Right? So I sat back and I was like, wow, that's true. Because so many people were able to hide behind, I'm going to work, we'll talk later, and never have the conversation. Well, what do you want to eat? I'm going to go to the store, or I'm just going to go in the room. I'm going to watch the show. You're going to stay over here. You can watch the show. Oh, the game is on. Can we talk later? And when COVID shut down the NFL, the NBA, the NHL, the ABC, and the DFG.
Yes. Some truths were made evident about the dynamics of relationship.
Yes, it was like,
oh, for sure.
What do we do now? You know, like, oh, hi. You know, like, what do we do now? And I have two brothers that live with me. Okay, so I'm the oldest. I'm Mama Bear, and I have my little brother. He's 23, and I have another brother. He's 28, and we live in the same space. Thing is, I have my space.
Yes.
And I go to my space.
Yeah.
And I close the door.
Yeah.
We're good. Not one time have we, just got into a knockout, drag out. And this is when COVID everything was closed. Everybody was in the house, because we have created this space where we know you're over here, I'm over here, we're doing this. And then we'll get together, we'll talk and laugh. Me and my brother had this conversation the other day. He was sitting on the left seat, I was sitting on the couch, and we just talked and we laughed. We talked about, what are we going to eat for dinner? Stuff like that. And I was okay. But I think because so many people are hiding behind they've been hiding behind their dysfunction for so long, They have no distractions. The ugly stuff started coming out, and now I don't like you.
Yeah. Now I'm realizing there's a whole lot about you that I do not like. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
The kids grow up too, right? When the kids get older and they leave the house and they've been married for, we've been married for 20 years, and now little John gone.
Yeah.
And I'm not gonna, I almost said little baby, but we're not gonna call that. Little Ashley is gone now, and everybody's gone. You know, nobody wants baby kids. Nobody wants baby's kids. But they're gone, and then they're like, oh, we're getting a divorce because our life was the children. So,
but I think it's also perception, right? It's what you think the relationship is, right? So if you're in a space, person's face all the time, you make one of two choices. You either say to yourself, and this goes for kids or your significant other, you're in my face all the time, you're working on my nerves. Or for the past 2 years, we've struggled to find time to spend together. Let's get reacquainted. Let's get to know each other. It's what you purpose this time to be. That's what's going to determine what the outcome is. If it's that you had issues before and now you have the time to talk through them, if that's a priority, then that's what you will do. Or you will choose to see, this is why I didn't like, this is why I thought about leaving you. Woo, woo, woo. So you have this internal conversation in your mind about what this is, right? Our perfect example, my daughter, because I was her teacher, when school would be done, she'd be ready. She'd want to go to her dad's. I'm recently divorced. It's been a year since September when we do it.
But we'll talk about that. We'll talk about your release.
Yeah. On it, like the minute school ended about maybe 4:00, she's like, it would really be nice if I could go with my dad. And it would be like a dagger to my heart. Cause I'm like, you don't want, I would internalize it. You don't want to be with mommy? Why not me? You don't like spending time with me? So I caught myself and I said, you know what? How about you just ask the question? I said, my son, what makes you want to go with daddy in the evenings? I said, because mommy enjoys, we have shared custody. I said, mommy enjoys spending time with you. And she said, mommy, I'm with you all day. And when I get to go to daddy's house, by the time I go to his house and eat dinner, get my bath and do my homework or hang out a little bit, it's time to go to bed. And then it's time to come back here. I get to see you all day. And it was like, oh, this has nothing to do, like, I'm all making this about me. I'm internalizing what I think is her rejection of me. And that's exactly what it was. I felt rejected, but I chose to feel rejected for at least a brief few minutes before I spent some time in self-reflection. And as a pretty good pediatrician, and then this is the stuff I tell my parents all the time, I'm like, how about you do what you tell your patients, mamas, to do? So I was like, let me think this through. Let me just ask the question, why? And when she gave me her response, that released all that emotion. It was like, oh, this ain't got nothing to do with me. It's not about an issue of preference and who she wants to be with. It's literally in her little 7-year-old mind. I've given you your time.
Right.
We're done. Now is daddy's time. And I think
we're done.
We're done. God bless you. And I think for people in other relationships, it's asking that question when a husband finished, because this was my patient's issue, he'd be on Zoom from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. working. Literally way more than we would be working if he was in person, right? So by the time he got off at 8, he just wanted to sit somewhere and chill. But his wife's sitting over there like, what are we doing? You don't want work? Let's hang out. And he'd be like, no, I need to decompress. But he wouldn't say anything. Instead, he became resentful. He'd still spend time with her, but internally, he'd be pissed because all I wanted to do was have an hour to myself. Well, one, verbalize, don't internalize. 2, ask the questions, babe, how can I meet your needs? It's hard for me. I'm working 12-hour days when usually it's 8 hours, and I'm just struggling to find myself. How can I maintain me and still be there for you? And that's, with COVID, that should be the goal, is to spend time in self-reflection, understand what is the perception that I'm coming into this situation with, and then create a space for dialogue so that the person who's feeling slighted has an opportunity to talk about it without being judged, ridiculed, or turned off and down, and being able to accept what they're saying.
Yeah. Say what you have to say without any type of repercussions. Because I should not discount your feelings just because it's making me feel some type of way.
Yeah.
This is your feelings, and I have to respect the way that you feel, and then we can have a coming together. Now, you are freshly, well, not fresh anymore,
Right.
but about a year into a divorce, and you are a I won't say reinvented or anything like that, because you were all of that in a bag of chips beforehand, but you have this light, another type of light that is radiating from you. And a lot of people,
I said it's called peace.
it's called, so many people, hey, if that's what it is, then shine the light on you, right? So the a lot of people don't talk about divorce, right? They don't talk about divorce. They don't talk about the road to divorce, or the road after divorce, or how you don't have to feel deflated, or you didn't necessarily fail. Like, people like, oh, I must have failed in life or whatever. But
Right.
Talk about that, because I think it's important that women should hear the conversation about what that looks like. How long were you married? And
Yep. So I was married for 11 years. I got married in 2008. We had dated for 4 years before getting married. I met him in 2004, moved out from California to Maryland to be with him in 2005. I would not recommend that, because we had been in a long distance relationship, and it literally was the Cliff's Notes. So I got the best of him because we didn't get to spend a lot of time together. So we were always on our best behavior. And even when there were issues, I know for myself personally, I'd hold back in saying anything because I didn't want to mess up the 3 days we had together. Then we moved in together, and it was hot, stanky mess. Like, I'm very type A alpha female, did not grow up with a father in the home. I could do bad all by myself, and was pretty self-sufficient and self-reliant. And he grew up in a 2-parent household. Dad was the breadwinner. He was the man of the house. So there was this expectation of what my role would be and what his would be, even knowing that I'm type A, alpha female, go-getter, gunner, hustler. Like, that's who I was and have always been. Mm-hmm. And I don't know if that's what attracted him to me, but then there was this thought that it would change. I don't know. I can't speak to his experience. What I can speak to is that God reveals truth. We just choose to ignore it. Mm. So the issues that we dealt with in 2005 to 2006, when I initially broke up with him, are the same issues that I had when I made a decision. It was my decision to file for divorce. And I always like to be transparent in that, because it was a long-standing, well thought out, prayed through choice. And I stayed in the marriage for a long time. I Googled annulments when we got back from our honeymoon.
No, ma'am. Wait a minute. So let me ask you this. Was it that you decided to push those things to the back and think that, okay, so once I say I do, these things are going to change and it'll be okay? That was something that you already knew was not going to work?
Not that it wasn't going to work. I just saw, I tried my best to balance out the good, the bad, and the ugly. But what I also did, and this is something that we actually have talked about as sisters in Lisa's spaces, is an issue of self-worth. I continuously wanted to prove to him I was worthy of his love, adoration, and affection, because I did have daddy issues. My father was not in my life until my 30s. And I spent a long time trying to prove myself worthy of his love. Mm. And for that reason, I would convince myself that it was my issue. You don't know what a good relationship looks like. You don't value a good man. And he would actually mention these things to me as well. And so it pushed a button like, yeah, you're right. I got daddy issues, and that's probably why I'm tripping, and I should just be grateful. Mm. And then, as you said, we evolve. And it wasn't until I became a mother. Mm-hmm. And I asked, Yolandra, is this the person you want your daughter to see in this relationship? And is this a relationship you want your daughter to see? I thought about leaving when I was pregnant. I mean, there were every couple of years there was this, is this the time? But I said, when I was pregnant, I was like, I don't want to be that again, pride. And there are a lot of generational curses that I feel like I was successfully able to break. And this was like that last one, like a successful marriage was the last one. And I was like, I could do, we're both doctors. This on paper, we make sense. And then I was like, you know what? I started to really appreciate what my worth was and understand that the example that I set for my daughter would either facilitate the perpetuation of intergenerational trauma.
Mm-hmm.
It would make a pivot for her and generations of women that come from my ovaries to then manifest a much higher level of self-worth by the
Right.
choice I make. And that's what I did. So in 2016, I made a decision that at some point I was going to transition out. I was very transparent in how I was feeling in the relationship. And it was one of these, well, what are you going to do? Well, no, I need these things. Well, I ain't doing this. It was like this sort of, if you do this, then I'll do that. And I'm like, no, that's not how that's not what I need right now. I need to be loved on. I need to be cherished. I need to be considered. And I don't feel that way. And when I didn't see it happening, I made a commitment. And it was hard because we haven't even talked about religion, but from a religious standpoint, the church that I attend, my pastor has a strong belief that like divorce is the work. Like I don't gradate sin. Sin is sin. And that's why Jesus died on the cross for me. And I'm
Right.
sure there's a lot of sin I done done that God and Jesus have forgiven me thanks to the redemption by his blood.
Right.
And there was this whole concept that divorce was horrible. It was like the worst sin ever. And so I was guilted into staying. But 2018 showed up. And I don't know what it was about that year, but I prayed and I said, God, reveal to me your plan. If you tell me to stay, I will do whatever your will dictates. And literally, like that week, I had this really awesome dream where my ex was married to someone else and they had 2 other kids. I mean, I could taste the turkey. It was Thanksgiving. I remember clearly. I could taste the turkey. I could smell the turkey. He had 2 other children and his wife and my daughter. We were all at the same table. And then his daughters and our daughter together went to my house, spent the night and did Black Friday sales. And then I brought them back to his house. And it was so peaceful and so well co-parented. When I woke up that next morning, I said, God, I hear you. Things I needed. I said, I need a good attorney who's had some experience and then gone through some things. The attorney that I got actually got a divorce at the same time where her daughter was the age of my daughter when she got divorced and had lots of experience. She told me you need $10,000 to get a divorce. Luckily, I didn't need it, but guess what? I got a fellowship, and how much do you think it paid me? $10,000.
What you say?
With benefits and a steady paycheck, because this entrepreneurial pursuit ain't no joke. But she said, in order for you to keep custody of your child, you better have a check hitting your account every 2 weeks. All of a sudden, George Washington University called me with an opportunity I didn't even know about. It was part-time, so I still maintained my flexibility to be my daughter's class mom. It gave me benefits. So what insurance I would lose through my ex, I got through my employer. Literally everything I needed. I prayed about it and I said, God, if this is what I'm supposed to do, let it be so. And every single time he met me where I had a need, and we are successfully divorced and we are successfully co-parenting my daughter. Do we have issues now? Absolutely, because this process isn't perfect, but there has not yet been a moment where I have ever second guessed my choice, because I have peace and I have joy. And I have a clear understanding of who I am and what I deserve in a relationship.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's important that you prayed about it.
Mm-hmm.
You asked for clarity. And I think that when we pray, we need to not only go for the answer that we want, but maybe go for the answer that we really don't expect,
Right.
because we'll hear, well, I really want him. And then you look for the answer of that's him, right? When
Yep.
God, no, 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 no. Big red flashing lights that's saying no. I remember one time I was up, and I don't know if I wrote about this or I talked about it or whatever, one of the little excursions, but I was let me see. We met was it like a November? that we met. I think we met November of 2016. I met you in 2016.
It was September because I just posted something.
Yeah, it was because then we at the conference.
Right. We did Speak and Write in Atlanta in November the following year.
Right, but did we meet at the conference before the retreat?
I feel like
we did. Either way it goes, I was having a lot of stressful times and things like that. And it's this park that I like to walk. It's the Chattahoochee River Trail, and I am emotionally drained. I remember I was in the shower and I was whatever, and I'm like, I just got to get out the house. Put on me a big t-shirt and some stretch pants and threw on some gym shoes, and I walked this trail. And I don't know who was on the trail with me at this point. It really did not matter. But I had on my headphones and I was crying. I'm talking about
ugly cry.
Yeah, to the point where when you get to the point where you really don't care who's around, because I was just I was really crying, and I was praying and crying and asking God questions, and that was the moment that I accepted the fact that my papa had passed away. It had been months. It had been about 6 months about 4 or 5 months since he had passed, but I had accepted it at that moment. Still brokenhearted, but I had really accepted it. And I remember asking God to send me a sign. And, he sent me a sign, and I still wasn't sure. I asked him for another sign, and it was stuff going on over here, And I remember saying, I will not look for it. It has to come to me.
Right.
Because we make ourselves, we will look for the answer. When God is God, he can bring it to your doorstep. He can bring it right to you. And that's exactly what he did. He brought it to me. I mean, I was like, well, wasn't it Elijah that was by the brook? I mean, I was bold. I'm not looking for nothing, whatever. And that's where he wanted me to be. He wanted me to be raw and honest.
Yep.
And he wanted me to tell him how I felt and what I needed to see. And he showed me without me looking for it. Like, I was like, nope, because I know me, right? I knew me at the time. I'll flip up rocks. I'm like.
And then you convince yourself that this is the thing. Right. Like, you sit there and I don't care how out of balance it is, how out of pocket it is. You will sit there and convince yourself that this is it. Even though God is like you said, that red flashing light, this ain't it, this ain't it, this ain't it. And that was truly one of my lessons, was that whole let go and let God. I have historically, not anymore, but I have historically been such a control freak. I'd pray, but while I'm praying, I'm working on the solution. And I'm like, how you praying? God, can you please let me do. He humbled me. And I think for some of us who are a little bit more hard-headed than others, and I'm in that group, he will put you in situations where you have no choice but to humble yourself and submit. And that, when I think through, especially in terms of the divorce, part of my life lesson going through that was to learn to submit my will. And truly, when I pray, to just sit, like at this point now in my life, I pray on things and then I just sit back and wait for God. I can be trying to control it, but I jack myself up. I have jacked myself up every single time. And then in my 40s, I am now finally learning to just release it, let go, and then just be patient in the process. Because as we talked about earlier, one, there's learning in the process. Two, God, there are things that God has to have ready for me so that by the time I reach what he has for me, it's ready and I'm ready. But when I'm too busy rushing through, it's like a premature baby. Now you got the baby's on life support,
right?
Put drugs and things to try to keep this situation alive. When one, maybe God didn't mean for it to exist in the way that you've defined it, or you didn't let it cook long enough for it to be ready for you to do whatever it was supposed to do.
Right. Because a blessing is a beautiful blessing when it comes on time. But when a blessing is given to you or you decide you're going to go for a blessing too early, it becomes a curse.
Yep.
And that is something that you do not want.
No, not at all.
Woo, girl, listen. Let me just say, that this was everything. Like I appreciate the conversation, the openness, the transparency, because so many people that don't feel comfortable with being transparent, and like they have on this, you're a doctor, right? Like, oh, I'm no, and I can't let people see on the inside, and I can't let people really see. But what's appreciated about anyone is that you can be real in every single situation, because how are you going to help people being fake? You just cannot do it.
Right.
And one of the things I can say definitely about you is that from the very beginning, there was nothing fake about you. We've had a lot of good laughs, a lot of just transparent conversations, and just really having good talk. So this was no different.
And good it cries.
Oh, girl. Good. Ugly. Snot. Like, just cries. But you know what? It's so therapeutic when you can. I thank God for connecting me with women, and with women and men, that I can be real and I can handle my truth.
Yes.
You know, and I make it my business. I cannot be anybody else but who I am. I just can't. I'm not a different person out off of this platform that I am in, walking through the corridor at an Atlanta hotel looking for food. I am the same person, that you, I remember that walk. We were mad, like
hungry.
We're hungry. Where's the food? Same person you met at the house in North Carolina on the beachfront. The same person that was doing beach yoga, which was so fun, out there. So yeah. I appreciate being able to maintain, and first of all, I appreciate meeting you, because that was a beautiful connection. But maintaining the friendship is what I am most grateful for.
Likewise, my love. Thank you for always being your true, authentic, transparent self, and for being one of my earth angels.
Oh, yes, I remember. Okay, tell us what you have coming up. Please make sure you tell them about your YouTube. If you have a YouTube channel, things like that, please let everybody know.
So on social media, on Instagram and Twitter and on YouTube, you can find me at Ask Dr. Yola. My website is askdryola.com, and on Facebook and LinkedIn, I'm Dr. Yolandra Hancock. I have a telemedicine practice now, so that no matter where you are across the globe, as long as you have a decent internet connection, you can connect with me for a variety of needs. I'm now a Reiki 2 healer. I will become a Reiki master in February, thanks to my Reiki master, Courtney Smith Brown, over in Waldorf, Maryland at Shabak Yoga. I actually am getting certified to become a doula. One of the issues that we are dealing with as Black women is maternal mortality. And I want to be the change I want to see in the world. And what better way to do that than not only have my pediatric skills, but also expand that so that I can coach mothers through a healthy pregnancy. I had issues myself during pregnancy. I was sick for almost the entire 9 months. I was stressed because of a challenging relationship. So it's by the grace of God that my daughter came on time and was of normal weight. I almost lost her at the end of my pregnancy. And so I want to be able to, one, be transparent through what I went through to help other mommies, particularly Black mommies, as they're going through this process. And then I'm actually getting ready to open up my own practice, my brick and mortar practice, next month. So I'll be able to see patients, lay hands on, pray for, and work with families to help them achieve their health goals.
Oh, that is amazing. Congratulations. I am so happy for you. I'm very proud of you. You are expanding and growing, and stay tuned, because I'm going to have to call you Miss Doula. Well, do you have somebody? Yes, I do. Let me get her on the phone right now.
Well, I will be out in the ATL coaching you through correcting physicians because of their bias and all that stuff that we don't really address in medicine, but need to.
And you know what's crazy? A lot of people, and I want to talk to everyone, not just African Americans, but everyone. Get somebody you trust.
Mm-hmm.
Talk to somebody you trust, especially if you're a woman and you're watching this. Our bodies are very fragile and they're very they're complicated. And if you don't have someone that is going to take care of you and that's actually going to look at you and tell you what's wrong or what's right or what you are doing right, then you have to find somebody else. It's not just worth going back to that person.
Someone who's going to listen. I think one of the challenges in medicine is that we collectively, healthcare professionals, particularly doctors, bring our ego in the room. And the minute a patient has an idea what they think is going on with their body, they want to ask some questions about what we decide is going on with their body, we get in our feelings. And in the 15-minute visit, which is why I own my own space, I don't believe in a 15-minute visit. In order for me to really understand and work in achieving your health goals, I need at least a good 30 minutes to get all up in your business. And so it's really important to find a healthcare professional who's going to take the time to listen and actively hear you, not just be like, here's a prescription for fill in the blank. No, I just had a patient who had some thyroid issues. Automatically, her doctor wanted to give her a thyroid medication. Well, are you going to address the antibodies that are attacking the thyroid first? Or we just stayed on it? No, that's I do. Like, what is your biggest concern? What are you going through? What can we do together? And then staying in communication. I'm in relationship with my patients. Like, I'm going to their houses when their babies have a birthday, when they have a christening. We are family. And I think that's an art of medicine that has been lost. It used to be that way back in like the 50s and 60s. For a variety of reasons, we've lost that beautiful, trusting, intimate relationship that I really try to foster with each of my patients. And, on the pediatric side, it's the patients and the parents. And on the adult side of things, it's a relationship with them as well. So that we trust each other, we communicate with each other. And I don't get in my feelings if you don't agree with what I think we should do. I mean, this just happened yesterday. One of my patients was like, I don't want to do that. I said, well, what do you want to do? She said it. And I said, well, try that first. If it doesn't work out, we'll revisit this. But let me know what your issues are with it so that I know whether to recommend it again or if it just comes off the table. It's your body. It's your decision. I'm just here to sort of coach you through some of these choices.
Right. Correct. So, wow, you are amazing.
Thank you,
And again, thank you so much for this conversation. Thank everybody for watching with our amazing Dr. Yola and our second installment of the second segment of Conversations with Greatness. Stay tuned for the next. Bye.
Bye, my love.